Long ago, when the Earth didn't know itself, some of the chemicals bowed to the sovereignty of scarcity and awoke conquered by the feeling of want. Their world of oneness fractured into two-ness, separating wanter from wanted. Physics and chemistry do not care whether an organism persists. The physical laws of the universe rely on entropy, constantly pulling ordered systems toward decay. To oppose that decay, early biological forms had to do something the environment did not dictate. They had to make choices. But a choice only yields a biological benefit if the organism can hold on to the reward. If it gathers energy from its environment but has nowhere to store it, the effort dissipates. To survive, the organism must draw a hard line dividing the universe in half, creating a definitive boundary between this and not this. The line between self and non-self is an economic necessity. It provides the minimum bookkeeping required to know where gains go and dictate what is off-limits to consumption. An organism cannot metabolize its own cell wall without destroying the machinery it tries to maintain. This rigid boundary creates an obvious tension. If every single living thing is strictly locked inside its own bookkeeping system, constantly competing for finite resources, how do we explain the existence of cooperation, alliances, or civilization? The subject-object division acts as the foundational economic claim of biological life. It strands the organism in what we might call the kingdom of two, where every action relies on calculating the exact distance between the self and everything else. The solution nature found is that biological boundaries are not fixed physical walls. Organisms have the capacity to locate discontinuities of themselves out in the world, and they can project their own self onto them. This outward placement is measured by a bounded scalar called allocentric self-form assignment, or alpha. It answers a single operational question the biological valuation machinery must solve before taking action. How much of me is inside this other thing? The baseline component of this equation is R, Hamilton's relatedness coefficient. It operates most clearly in insect economies, like bees and ants. A worker ant is 75% related to her sisters. Working across the colony boundary indirectly promotes her own genetics, so those shared genes build a highly structured internal economy. But the organism's detection system runs on phenotypic cues, appearance, behavior, proximity, not invisible genetic data. This brings in phi, or intraspecies extension. It allows a human to recognize self in genetically unrelated friends and partners, laying the groundwork for trade and the social contract. Every cooperative structure we build beyond the immediate family rests on this exact biological pull, finding targets that solve a survival problem. The scale of human civilization is a direct readout of the scale at which phi operates. This recognition regularly jumps the species line. We see the kappa variable, cross-species self-extension, perfectly modeled in the domestication of the dog. Early humans and proto-dogs didn't share genes. They recognized shared social structures like hierarchy, eye contact, and cooperative hunting. Over thousands of years, reciprocal kappa deepened. The self-boundary of the human and the self-boundary of the dog became mutually porous, opening up a literal economic exchange between two entirely different species. Dogs took on distinct biological labor: herding, guarding, and retrieving. Each role acts within the human economy, and the dog is heavily compensated in food, shelter, and medical care. That simple biscuit is a biological wage. Participation in these economies is mandatory. Evolution installs rigid impositions into the organism, drives like hunger, fear, and the sexual instinct. These drives generate a permanent distance to target that the organism experiences as an intolerable deficit it is compelled to close. We are not given the power to originate or elect these lanes of behavior. Evolution gave us drives that require us to trade, bond, and build. Cooperation is rigidly enforced by the sheer biological cost of staying alive. Because staying alive carries such a heavy biological cost, our nervous system does not waste energy presenting us with a neutral, objective map of reality. It presents us with an instruction manual. This lived experience is the attentional manifold. It is a highly distorted projection of the world, warped heavily by relevance. What the organism notices in its immediate surroundings is completely downstream of what it physically needs to survive. You can observe this economic distortion in action when encountering an eastern diamondback rattlesnake. Despite being moved and manipulated for photographs, a massive, wild rattlesnake like this one will often remain completely silent, entirely refusing to use its rattle. Decades ago, these animals behaved differently. A timber rattlesnake caught in the highly vulnerable act of swallowing prey would risk its own safety to rattle continuously. The benefit of deterring a heavy, wandering mammal outweighed the energy cost of the signal. This chart maps the marginal cost and advantage of rattling. As human expansion removed large mammals and replaced them with people who systematically kill noisy snakes, the marginal cost of a rattle skyrocketed. A warning signal became a death sentence, shifting the economic equilibrium sharply toward total silence. When a hiker fixates on the silence of the brush, they are allocating an attentional budget to a threat. The snake allocates its signal budget to silence. Neither is perceiving the objective truth of the other. They are perceiving the pure economic value of the encounter. Strict cognitive budgeting leaves everything outside an organism's relevance completely undefined. A dog operates in a rich olfactory world that a human cannot access, while a human routinely navigates a skybound realm that a dog rarely notices until a bird of prey suddenly intrudes. These distinct bubbles of awareness have a measurable shape. For humans, language acts as a behavioral readout of our attention, clustering tightly around areas of high relevance and leaving blank spaces where we assign no value. This visualization maps word embedding vectors. The left shows an unconstrained baseline of random points. The right reveals the hard boundaries of what our species can notice. Over time, this shape crystallizes into a hard outer shell, representing our maximum actionable universe. Every relationship we cherish, every trade we make, and every object we are capable of seeing is dictated by this biological constraint. We are floating in intersecting bubbles of experience, governed entirely by the natural order of the Kingdom of Two.